Being a royal is no cakewalk, and from fashion and dining to social graces and disciplining children and pets, there are loads of rules and protocol royalty are expected to abide by. Kate learned the ropes during her lengthy romance with William, but Meghan Markle will be expected to adhere to all the royal expectations each time she and Harry are seen together publicly, and when she dines with her new in-laws. Here are the most shocking expectations, traditions, regulations, and customs embraced by the royal family that even non-royals marrying in are expected to observe. Before we actually begin, make sure you go like, subscribe, and comment to our channel. And also, make sure you go check out our other videos, especially my latest Gillette one. Number 1. Stand up. Even when your legs are tired, or maybe you're in crutches. When the Queen stands, you stand. Everyone in the Queen's presence is required to rise when the Queen is standing, or when she enters or exits a room. Number 2. Curtsies and bows are required. When greeting the Queen, men are expected to bow their heads while women curtsy. However, curtsies are demure and subtle, dipped down with one leg behind the other, rather than the grand gestures depicted in old films and tales of Disney royalty. Number 3. Heirs travel apart. In cases of emergency, or in order to preserve the line to the throne, 2 heirs are not allowed to travel together. William and Catherine have made the choice to break royal tradition and travel with their children. But come George's 12th birthday, he and father will likely be required to fly separately. Number 4. The Queen's purse isn't just an accessory. The Queen isn't one to be rude, and so her purse is used to send subtle social signals. When she places her clutch on the table at dinner, it means it's time to wrap things up. So consider the bite you're reaching for your last. When she swaps her purse from her left hand to her right, it means she'd like to finish up her conversation. Number 5. Skip the PDA. Public displays of affection are frowned upon for the royal family, especially when traveling. Royals are expected to never make those from another. More conservative culture feel uncomfortable by showing signs of affection publicly. Case in point, William and Catherine's stoic poses during their visit to the Taj Mahal in 2016. Queen Elizabeth II is the United Kingdom's longest reigning monarch, which among other things means there's been long talk of the massive disruptive impact her death will have both on her own nation and the world. A new report by The Guardian brings up the subject. Again, going into great detail about the intricate ins and outs of what will happen when the day comes. It's pretty fascinating. Welcome back to my channel. I am Rashid and she's a Jake channel, and today we are explaining what will happen if the Queen dies. There are obvious things that will change, like the face of the British currency and the national anthem switching back to God Save the King. But the palace plan for handling her death and succession, reportedly called London Bridge, or The Bridge, includes plenty of less obvious, equally interesting things that might happen in the moments, days, and years after her death. Here are 5 of them. Number 1. The first people to know will speak in code. The Queen's private secretary, Sir Christopher Gelt, will be the first to be informed of her death, followed by the Prime Minister, according to The Guardian. When it happens, civil servants will say, London Bridge is down on secure lines. Number 2. Reporters will be sartorially prepared. Previous reports suggested the news might be held until 8 a.m. if the Queen dies overnight, but The Guardian now says it will be reported immediately. Either way, it will be delivered by reporters who are appropriately dressed in somber clothes. Every senior BBC presenter has to have a dark suit and black tie on standby, in which to announce the death of a senior member of the royal family, according to the Daily Beast Tom Sykes. Vice notes this is due to the fallout when, in 2002, Peter Sissons had on a red tie as he announced the Queen Mother's death. Number 3. The palace website will go dark. News of Queen Elizabeth II's death will be blasted out of the Press Association. The same text will appear on the palace website, which The Guardian said will be transformed into a somber single page. Number 4. You will be able to visit her coffin. In the days after her death and leading up to her funeral, the Queen will lie in state for the public to come visit. Business Insider reports that her coffin will sit in Westminster Hall, where there will be a short ceremony to mark the coffin's arrival, after which the public will be able to file past and pay their respects. More than 200,000 people filed past the Queen Mother's coffin, a number of Business Insider says the Queen will easily eclipse. Number 5. Her dogs may be invited to the funeral. Queen Elizabeth II's love for corgis knows no bounds, so it only makes sense that they might be invited to help celebrate her life. The Guardian reports that just as the mourners for Edward V were led by his fox terrier, Caesar, the Queen's corgis might attend her funeral. For now, though, we'll continue to wish her good health and celebrate her long life, which has no doubt had an impact on millions of people around the world. We love her dearly. Hello guys, welcome back to my channel. I am Rashid James with the Rashid James Day channel, and we just want to start by saying, thanks to some much-married monarchs, England has had many more queens than kings. Each has made a significant contribution to the English history, whether she wielded power as a queen consort, like Eleanor of Aquitaine, or as a ruler in her own right, like Elizabeth I and Queen Victoria. But who were the best women rulers? Today, we're going to answer that, the 10 best English queens in history. Before we begin, make sure you go like, subscribe, and comment down below for another video that we will be doing next. Let's begin. Number 1. Bertha of Kent. Perhaps the most well-known of all the pre-conquest queens, Bertha played a crucial role in the establishment of Christianity in England. She was the daughter of the Christian king Childebert I of Paris, who insisted that she be free to practice her own religion when she married the pagan king Athelbert of Kent. Bertha crossed the channel with her chaplain, Bishop Luther, and the pair converted an old Roman building into a chapel. She discussed her beliefs with her husband, ensuring that he welcomed the Pope's missionary, St. Augustine, when he arrived in 597. She also corresponded directly with the Pope, with the pontiff flattering her with comparisons to Helena, mother of the Emperor Constantine. Bertha and Athelbert were buried together inside a Christian church in England's first Christian kingdom. Number 2. Queen Elizabeth II. Queen Elizabeth II of Great Britain is the longest reigning monarch in British history. She celebrated 65 years on the throne in February 2017 with her Sapphire Jubilee. Queen Elizabeth II was born Princess Elizabeth Alexandra Mary on April 21, 1926 in London to Prince Albert, Duke of York, later known as King George V, and Elizabeth Bowes-Lyon. She married Philip Mountbatten, Duke of Edinburgh in 1947, became queen on February 6, 1952, and was crowned on June 2, 1953. She is the mother of Prince Charles, heir to the throne, as well as the grandmother of Prince William and Harry. As the longest-serving monarch in British history, she has tried to make her reign more modern and sensitive to a changing public while maintaining traditions associated with the crown. Number 3. Matilda of Scotland. Although a Scottish princess by birth, Matilda was also a descendant of Anglo-Saxon kings of England, making her a dynastically important bride for Henry I, the son of William the Conqueror. Matilda was raised first at Romsey Abbey and then Wilton Abbey. Her aunt, Abbess Christina of Romsey, was anxious that her niece should become a nun. She forced the girl to wear a veil, although Matilda reportedly tore it off and stamped on it when her aunt left the room. On his accession to the throne in 1100, Henry cemented his position by marrying Matilda, overcoming church objections that she was a nun. The couple had 2 children but were frequently apart, with Matilda acting as regent of England during the king's long absences in Normandy. She issued her own charters and administered justice. She was also renowned for her charity, with calls to her canonization following her death in 1118. Number 4. Eleanor of Aquitaine. As Europe's greatest heiress, Eleanor of Aquitaine was married at 15 to the monkish Louis VII of France. The couple proved incompatible and, with no son, divorced in 1152. Within weeks, Eleanor had married Henry of Anjou, who became King of England in 1154. Eleanor and Henry worked together to rule an empire that, as well as England, included much of modern France. By 1166, however, the couple, who had 8 children, were estranged. Eleanor returned to Aquitaine in 1168. 5 years later, she rebelled against Henry and consequently spent the next 16 years imprisoned in Salisbury Castle. She returned to prominence as Queen Mother in 1189, governing England on behalf of her absent son, Richard I. Following his death in 1199, Eleanor helped to secure the throne for her youngest son, John. She was John's greatest and most active supporter, finally dying in April 1204 at the age of 82. Number 5. Philippa of Hainault. Philippa of Hainault's marriage to Edward III was agreed between his mother Isabella of France and her father, the Count of Hainault. The Count provided troops for Isabella's invasion of England, in which she deposed her husband Edward II in favor of her teenage son. Philippa and Edward couple were soon devoted to each other, producing 12 children. Edward's reign was dominated by the war in France, and Philippa often accompanied him on campaign. At other times, she served as regent, with her army capturing the King of Scots at the Battle of Neville's Cross in 1346. She was also a merciful influence upon her husband, regularly interceding with him on behalf of captives. She is remembered as the founder of Queen's College, Oxford, and as a patron of scholars. Philippa, who was just queen for over 40 years, was archetypal medieval queen, and one of whom many later queens remodeled themselves. Number 6. Elizabeth I. No list of the best English queens is complete without Elizabeth I, who reigned between 1558 and 1603. Elizabeth was a daughter of King Henry VIII and Anne Boleyn, and had an unpromising start, being declared illegitimate following her mother's execution. She survived interrogation and imprisonment during the reigns of her half-siblings to become England's greatest ruling queen. Elizabeth presided over a period of exploration and great invention, as well as the defeat of the Spanish Armada in 1588. She also ordered the execution of her Catholic cousin, Mary Queen of Scots, in 1587. One of her first acts as queen was to create a Protestant religious settlement for the Church of England, which has proved lasting. At times ruthless, the queen refused to share power with her husband, although she ultimately paved the way for her smooth succession of her cousin James VI of Scotland and the union of two crowns. Number 7. Anne. Anne may seem a surprising choice as one of England's best queens, but as the first monarch of the United Great Britain, she deserves her place. Anne was the younger daughter of Catholic James II and VII. She helped to spread rumors that James' son, the Old Pretender, had been smuggled into his mother's chamber in the warming pan at his birth in 1688. When her Protestant brother-in-law, William of Orange, invaded, Anne joined with him against her father. She was a virtual invalid by the time she succeeded William in 1702, but presided over an important period of British history, including the Duke of Marlborough's victories in the War of the Spanish Succession, and the Act of Union in 1707, which established her as Queen of Great Britain. Although she endured 17 pregnancies and left no heir, and her Protestant cousin, George of Hanover, succeeded her in 1714. Number 8. Caroline of Ansbach. Caroline of Ansbach was one of the most politically influential queen consorts and is popularly considered to be the power behind George II's throne. She was highly intelligent, managing affairs in such a way that her husband never suspected her true influence. In 1727, for example, when George decided to replace his father's Prime Minister, Sir Robert Walpole, with his own candidate, Caroline was able to quietly persuade her husband that it was his idea that Walpole should remain. She worked closely with Walpole throughout the reign, with the pair meeting to discuss policy privately before raising it with George, manipulating him to ensure that he followed their wishes. She also acted as regent during the king's absences in Germany. Although he was never faithful, George was devoted to Caroline. On her deathbed, when she urged him to remarry, he refused, saying that he would only have mistresses. He was devastated when she died in 1737. Number 9. Queen Victoria. Before Queen Elizabeth II, Queen Victoria, who came to the throne as an 18-year-old in 1837, held the record as Britain's longest reigning monarch. Her reign of over more than 60 years saw great changes. She presided over the peak of Britain's power and influence, while her 9 children married into most of the royal houses of Europe. Victoria married her cousin Prince Albert in 1840 and remained devoted to him for the rest of her life. She entered perpetual mourning following his death in 1861. She was, however, able to retain control of her affairs, regularly meeting with her prime ministers as well as becoming Empress of India in 1876. She reached the peak of her popularity at her Golden Jubilee in 1887 and her Diamond Jubilee in 1897. Old age finally caught up with her on January 22, 1901, when she died at Osborne House of the Isle of Wight. Number 10. Elizabeth Bowes-Lyon. While Victoria was Britain's longest reigning monarch until Elizabeth II, the longest lived queen was Elizabeth Bowes-Lyon, better known as the Queen Mother of Queen Elizabeth II, who was 101 when she died in 2002. Her husband George VI became king unexpectedly in 1936, following the abdication of his elder brother Edward VIII. The couple proved a successful team, with Elizabeth coming into her own during the Second World War. Hitler is supposed to have called her the most dangerous woman in Europe, and from the outset, she strove to improve British morale. She refused to allow her 2 daughters to be evacuated, while declaring that she could now look the East End in its face when Buckingham Palace was bombed. Elizabeth spent half a century as Queen Mother after her husband's death in 1952, during which time she was arguably the most popular member of the royal family. Thank you for watching this top 10 video. Make sure you go check out our top 5 videos also, and go check out my Gillette ad review. Sorry, but I think that's going to be just about it. Hopefully you guys enjoy this one, and go check out many other videos, and we will be seeing you next time on the Rashid James Day channel. Peace.